So the name Derwent actually comes from the river Derwent, which flows through the Lake District, and it was how we transported the wood through the countryside to get from port all the way to the original factories in Keswick. So the Derwent water is how we've got our name.
Here at Derwent, we're all about innovation. So when you go for our range, you'll see that we have a pencil for every different type of art, basically.
Well, the thing to appreciate here is that every artist is different. Now, because of that, we've actually got 14 distinct professional level ranges across graphite, colour and watercolour, some of which are very specialist, things like pastels and metallics as well. But ultimately, we are very, very refined in what we do, and they're all designed with feedback and input from the expert and the hobbyist artist community. Hi, I'm Tom Lewington, Global Sales Director from Derwent. I'm here in the Jackson studio to talk about Derwent.
I'm Adam Gaskell. I'm the Technical Manager at Derwent, and we're going to talk about how pencils are made. One of the things I do is research and development, and to give people the different tools that they ask for.
Every time I get the opportunity to pick up a pencil and to start shading or colouring or even sharpening a pencil, it's something that takes me to a really good place and helps me connect with what we're really trying to do, and that's just create beautiful pieces of art and just create a little moment that's really precious. The Derwent business really began all the way back in 1832, and it was the Banks family that set up the first mill in the Keswick area. Really, it's been this history that's created a legacy of expertise and really made sure that the artist's materials today reflect the same quality principles all the way back at the start in the 1830s. Well, the Banks family set up the mill in that area on purpose because the world's richest and purest quality graphite is actually from the Borrowdale Valley just round the corner. And that's where the very first pencil was actually created. So literally underneath the roots of a tree, a farmer picked up some graphite, wrapped it in sheep's wool and marked his sheep. That's the beginnings of the first pencil, as it were. And that remains, even today, the richest graphite source in the world. Now, the mine actually closed back in the late 1800s. Anne Banks was the last of the Banks family that owned the graphite mine in Borrowdale. And actually, when she passed away, she handed over the mine to the National Trust. So we actually source elsewhere now, but the same quality aspects that we need to maintain from those early days of graphite are what we still adhere to. It has to be the best possible graphite available. So the original Cumberland Pencil Company products were all graphite pencils, and they were literally designed for any pencil user that needed a graphite pencil. Now that evolved and took form in a number of different ways, including the development of things like black edge pencils used by carpenters with different wooden barrel inserts. And really that gave us a good UK presence that then started selling internationally as well, albeit quite locally, but internationally. Now that carried on for a number of years, all the way through to the beginning of the 20th century, where we actually launched the Lakeland range of pencils under the Derwent brand, which is still a part of the Cumberland Pencil Company at that time, and now is actually what we're known as, the Derwent brand. So technically we're still known as the Cumberland Pencil Company to Her Majesty's Company's House, but actually everybody will know us as Derwent. Well, our artists, our customers, are at the forefront of everything we do. We only create solutions and artist materials that solve the needs they truly have. So every aspect of design and testing is with them in mind. And what that meant through our years is that we realised through their help that we needed different solutions to solve different problems, whether that be a need for softer pencils or harder pencils or with higher colour intensity pencils, some that were dry, some that were water soluble. We would make it with them in mind. And because of that, we now have breadth and specialist breadth with it, so different solutions in different subcategories that mean whatever the need is, whatever the problem is, whatever the desired effect is, that we have the solution for it. And it's not just in pencils, it is also in paints and other pastel block type formats as well. So artists' needs and tastes have changed, they've evolved. And Derwent has very much been at the forefront of innovating and making sure that what we bring to market really solves the needs of today. That means we've extended outside of pencils into mixed media. So we now have a very good paint range of paint pan sets, of blocks and pastels, and all of the accessories you would need to get the most out of those artist materials. Ultimately, Derwent doesn't stand still, and it's the fact that the artist community is part of what we do from the inside, but also from the outside, that makes it relevant. There's no point making something just because we can. It has to really add value to everybody.
I worked in the lab for 25 years. I started as a quality technician. Then I moved over into research and development, where I used all the skills I'd learned about what the product should do and to see on the market where we could put other products. And then I went from research and development into the technical manager. When creating a product, we look on the market to see what's there, and we also look in our own range. What we don't want to do is bring out two ranges that are exactly the same. For the last 15 years, on and off in the lab, we've been looking at how we could create a pencil in between hard and soft, but that really skids across the top of the paper, or a better way of putting it, as it has no friction to it. So this is where Chrome Flow came about. We managed to get a product that we thought did exactly that. Put colour on the paper with very minimal force, and was a real bright, in-your-face range. As well as that, we're all about quality. If we look at our graphic range going through the factory, every batch that's made is tested against a set of standards in the lab. And the graphic range being our oldest range, the standards in the lab date right back to 1938. So every graphic pencil that you use will have the same quality as the first production that was made back then. To make a pencil, the first thing we need is a set of ingredients. Most mixers will contain of a French chalk, a gum binder, and pigment. That's the very basics. And then as we go through the ranges, others will have ingredient X added to give it such and such a property. What they'll do is they'll weigh them up into a big sack. That sack will get added to the mixer. The mixer will churn it up along with water. And what you're doing with that is you're taking it into a big paste, which will disperse all of our colour pigments in there. We'll then add heat to that mix, and we'll take it to a set temperature. So when the mix is at its set moisture content, it can go either one of two ways. It can either go over to be extruded in the block and paint pan machine, or it goes the other way to make a pencil, which would be billeting. A billet is effectively a big cylinder of compressed mix. It's very simple. We'll put the mix in a big tube, and then it's compressed together to make a giant billet. What we're doing here is getting rid of all the air pockets. So that billet will now move into the machine, which is called the press. So what this is doing is you have a big piston coming from one side and pushes that billet through a little small hole, which will tell you the size of your pencil. So this is forming the inside of the pencil that we in the factory call the strip. Once that strip's pressed out, it will still have moisture in it, so it'll be quite wobbly. So we'll then put them into cans and put them onto a roller to straighten up the strips. Once we're happy that they're in nice and straight, we'll take that strip and put it in the oven. The oven is rotating constantly at a set temperature and tends to be in there between 2 and 4 hours. So once the strips are fully dried, they will then go on to the next stages. If it's a graphite, it needs to go in a furnace. The furnace will heat the graphite strips up to upwards of 1,000 degrees. This will vitrify the strips and turn them more glass-like. If it's a pastel or a charcoal, that is now ready to go and will write. If it's a colouring pencil or water-soluble pencil, that will need to go into wax. What you'll find at this moment, after it's came out of the oven, it won't write yet. So when it goes in the wax, that's what's giving it its writing properties. Once they've been in the wax for the desired amount of time, that then goes in a centrifuge, which basically means that they'll spin very fast, and all the excess wax will go to the outside and drain off out of the centrifuge. Once our strips have all been passed off for colour checks and strength, they move on into woodwork. So this is where we put the strip into the wood. So the woodwork machine needs to be set before we set it off. So what they'll do is take the diameter of each strip that comes through, because what you'll find is, even if it, say all the strips are 3.45 millimeters, depending on what colour's in there, it might shrink a little bit more, it might expand a little bit. So what they'll have to do at woodwork is measure it and then calibrate the machine so that it's ready for that particular size of pencils going through. What we'll have is 2 different slats. Both slats will have glue applied. One will have it in the grooves, one will have it on the flats of the wood. One side will have the strip actually placed in it. They'll go along the machine, and then once that gets turned over and put on top, and this is what we call a sandwich. So the sandwich then goes into a stack. So what happens is so many slats will all stack up in a row, and then they'll be compressed together, and they'll be sat there whilst the glue sets. That is then goes through the shaping machine that has blades which will spin really quick and shape it either into a hexagon or a round pencil. So we have 2 types of shapes for our pencils. We have hexagonal, which is more for when you're doing detail, and then we have round, which is more for comfort in your hand. It's critical that the grooves are set correctly. What you'll find is when the machine's being set, you'll have one person one side setting off the machine. They'll send it right through until the pencils come out the other end. So it starts with slats, comes out the other end at pencils, and we won't push the button on full production until the person on the other side is happy and gives the thumbs up. Once your mix is made and taken to the right moisture content, another way it can go is off to do blocks and paints. It's similar to how we do the pencil strips, but in this, they'll pour the full mix into the machine, and what that will do is compress the mix together, creating your billet actually in the machine, and then it will push it out either as a block or it'll be cut a few more times, creating a paint pan. That will then be pushed into an oven and dried. A lot of the team are multi-skilled and can actually run most of the machines throughout the factory. So if we have a rush on of a certain product, they can go over and help out. So all the machines that we have in the factory are all purpose-built machines. They've all been there since the year dot. We've streamlined a lot of the process, but the machinery that's there is purpose-built and does the job just as we want it to do. Now we have our finished pencil, but there's no livery on it. The staff in the paint room will come and collect the pencils to be painted. That is then put for what we have is a small pot of paint, and the pencil is pushed through that little pot, putting a very light layer of paint on. That will then go down a conveyor slowly, and when it gets to the end, it's touch dry, will drop onto the bottom, go back and start again. The pencil will have between 4 and 6 coats on it. So once the pencil is painted, then pencils are put through the finishing machine. What the finishing machine does is it will stamp on what the product is and the name of the colour inside it, and it will also sharpen the pencil. So the pencils now need to be dipped to give them the end colour. So we mix our own paints at Derwent, and we have them to a set viscosity. So when the pencils are loaded onto the dipping machines, they're then tilted to a certain angle to get our signature angle dip, dropped into the machine. It is absolutely critical that it's slowly brought back out of the paint so you don't get any bubbles or anything like that on the ends of your pencil. And then once it's clear of the paint, we'll move them back on and leave them to dry for a couple of hours. Once it's been dipped and dried, it can then move through into boxing as a finished pencil. So in the packaging department, first of all, we have racks of finished products. We then have different stations set up throughout the boxing department where pencils can be set into tins, or we have a line of 150 pencils. So it takes most of the room to sit around a big horseshoe with each person putting in 4 pencils at a time. We choose to use people over machines because we found no machine can replicate the speed and precision of humans, plus we are the last line of defence for the quality of the products. So once all the sets have been completed and everything's packaged, they're then sent out around the world.
So the Derwent range uses a number of types of wood, and it's all specific to what we need from that particular pencil. The more junior ranges use things like pine wood. For our professional ranges, we use California cedar wood, which is sourced purely for its qualities. It's very robust, very lightweight, very, very consistent quality.
It has minimal knots in it, which what a knot will do is make it very difficult to groove and to sharpen the pencil. And for you, the end user, it's a very clean wood and sharpens really well. We use PEFC sourced wood. What this effectively means is that every tree used, another tree is planted. Our pigments are sourced from all over the world. Where we can, we try not to replace anything. The only way that we'll replace anything is if it becomes obsolete, in which case we'll scour the world for something else similar or even the same, and we won't accept it off until it's gone through rigorous testing in the lab to make sure the product is exactly the same as it was before. We now have the largest selection of graphite pencils called our graphic range, and it ranges from 13B to 9H. What that means is the 9H, the H stands for hardness and the B stands for blackness. So the 13 is very, very dark, which means there's more graphite in it, and the H stands for hardness, which means there's more clay in it. The makeup of a graphic pencil is effectively ball clay and graphite. The more graphite you put in, the blacker the pencil becomes. The more clay you put in, the lighter it becomes and the harder the texture is. So we have a team in the lab where we'll look at the quality of everything going through the factory. So that's from the raw materials right through to the finished product, and we'll check it at each stage through the factory. So in the lab, we'll do a number of tests, but the main ones is when the strips are made and before they go into the wood, they'll go down to the lab where we'll check for the breaking strain. So we'll put them on a machine and then we'll lift the strip up and it'll snap the strip in half and take a measurement. This is measuring the force it takes to break the strip, because if it's not strong enough, we won't be able to get it through woodwork. And more importantly, we won't be able to sharpen it, or the consumer won't be able to sharpen it. We also look at the colour of the strips. Again, you don't want to be having a go with your yellow pencil and it's actually brown. We'll also look at the texture of the strips as well. So if it's meant to be a soft, glidey pencil, that's what you'll actually get. So in the lab, we have a mini factory. So the purpose of that mini factory is to produce small batches that if we need to, we can just throw away if it doesn't work, which gives us a bit of room to play and to try different things. So we'll be using mixes that produce 400 grams, whereas on the factory, they'll be doing 35 kilo. Another part of my role is making sure products can go through the factory floor as they should. So any problems that we see down there will come to me and my team, and we'll either go down and very quickly sort it, or we'll go away and investigate, and maybe a process needs to change, but we'll be the guys that do it.
We launched the Lightfast range of pencils back in 2018.
There was a big calling for Lightfast pencils. We were constantly getting asked, what's the Lightfast of this? What's the Lightfast of that? So our Lightfast pencils use a D6901 Lightfast standard. We'll colour out a block of colour and they'll be sent off to an external company. They'll test them in two ways. The first way is they'll put them on their machine that they have, which is basically a big light which represents the sun. They'll take a delta E before it goes on and then afterwards to see how much that's faded. They'll also sit outside in the Arizona sunshine where they'll be subjected to intense rays from the sun, and they'll do the same. The smallest change you get so much difference in will be a LF1, so that's very little change in your colour. LF2 is a little bit more. Both of them are classed as Lightfast, and then you also have some other ratings which will be classed as not Lightfast.
It is 100 colours of 100% light fast, truly light fast LF grade 1, LF grade 2 pencils, and the consistency through that range is absolutely magnificent. This really is the top of our range for those expert artists, as it were. And it's a really, really big part of the artist community, and what they expect from Derwent in quality is what they will get with the light fast range. So there's a series of how-to guides that will help any artist get the most from any particular range, whether it is something like the Lightfast range, where you can see what Jesse Lane did to help create the commissions for the Lightfast range of pencils there, or whether it's the Inktense range of pencils and paints, where you can see how Jake Spicer got the most out of those ranges to create the pieces he did for those commissions. There really are a number of bits of educational material out there available to everyone. What I will say is to have a look at all of them, have a go with them, and then you'll get to see how Curtis Holder uses all of the different materials available from the art range, whether it's graphite, colour, watercolour, or something more specialist like metallic and pastel. So there's a whole catalogue of tips and advice on how to get the most out of the Derwent range, but for me personally, it's about making sure you've got the right accessories. So to get the most from that high performance pencil, we need to make sure that you've got the right paper to draw on, you've got the right erasers to lift pigment and marks, and you've got the right sharpeners to get exactly the right end or strip end that you want. So the Derwent team is actually a truly global team. We have people all over the world in different functions, but ultimately we are across the factory in Workington, the museum in Keswick, and then some of our commercial functions are down in Aylesbury and globally as well. It really is a connected business, so we spend a lot of time together because it's a very tactile industry that we're in. We like to play with the toys and the tools that we've got, but we're also very well connected through digital interfaces as well. It's a very progressive team. It's very engaging. Everybody is in this because they love what they do and they love the Derwent brand. More importantly, they love the industry and they love being around art. And it's that gives everybody a real passion for what we do and keeps it interesting, it keeps it fun, also keeps it really relevant to making sure that we're connected to the industry in which we work.
We all get on really well, which we have to, because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of interaction between all the different people, going from the managing director, who will often be walking throughout the factory, talking to everybody and finding out what's going on, to the people on the shop floor and the people in the labs, always collaborating with each other. We then have the head offices down in Aylesbury, where especially the lab team and the purchasing team will need to talk to each other on a regular basis, constantly communicating virtually, and then we have regular trips to Aylesbury to do things face to face because we find things move a lot better there. It's all about building up relationships throughout the team and having the trust in one another. So Derwent is generally a happy place to work. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have members of staff who have been here for 25, 30, 35 years. It tends to be a place that people go to and then enjoy it and sometimes see out their career there.
So when I joined the business back in 2017, I wanted to work with a group of people who really cared about what they do. I wanted to join a business that manufactured in the UK, that really put quality at the heart of everything that we were doing, and something that was progressive. Now, the artist industry is wonderful, and to get to work with people who do what they love every day is a rare thing, and it's infectious in that I too have taken up art and really do value the fun, the excitement, but also the peace of mind that comes from working within the art world. Well, there's definitely an underlying feeling of quality and heritage and specificity within the brand. It's all about making sure that the products that are in hand really do resonate with the user, with the artist, and they get a real feel for what it can do for them. Much of the heritage absolutely was based around landscapes within the Lake District, but more recently in the last 10 years it's really focused on making sure the commission on the particular artist set reflects a use case or reflects a certain aspiration for that artist. Really, it's the consistency and quality that's gone into those heritage ranges that make them so desirable even today in all markets.
So we still have our museum situated in Keswick, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. We're surrounded by lovely hills and fantastic scenery.
The museum has actually been in operation for over 40 years, but the current building that we're in was opened in 1991, and it was purely designed to allow us to share our rich history, but not just from Derwent and the Cumberland Pencil Company, but from the world of pencils itself. So if it's raining, it's busy, and that means we get around 70,000 people a year going through the doors of the museum. But what they're always going to find are interesting interactive displays that talk about the history of our wonderful industry and of the company and of the products that we've made through the years. They'll also get a chance to play around with some of the products and do some art classes and workshops and really dive in to what really makes this a wonderful, wonderful business. So over weekends and through half terms and summer holidays, there's a number of workshops that are put on for junior artists and anyone else who wants to join in. And they are normally artist-led events that show you how to develop certain techniques or how to get the most out of the Derwent range of products. It's very accessible. No need to book. You can turn up and you can join into anyone that's going on, and they are very regularly put on. So the old factory building is still there. It's been fully renovated and looking wonderful and fresh, just as it would have done when it was built all those years ago. It's a protected building, and very lucky to have it in the background of the museum. When you go to the museum, you can expect to find a good history of the pencil and its beginnings in the Borrowdale Valley in the 1500s, how it was actually mined and how people used it across different industries, how it became more expensive actually than gold at one particular point, and how the mines themselves were heavily guarded by security to make sure that people didn't sneak in and steal early deposits of graphite. You'll also find a number of donated items from across the world of pencils, so not just from the Derwent history, but from where people have actually donated items of historical significance to the museum as well. So some of the oldest pencils in the world are on display. A replica of one of the Queen's Jubilee diamond pencils is there as well, as are a number of miniature graphite sculptures created by world-renowned artists. So don't just limit it to a rainy day. Make sure you go to the museum when it's sunny as well. It really is a wonderful base for Keswick, the Lake District and the home of pencils. So in 1942, a gentleman called Charles Fraser Smith actually arrived and very discreetly asked for some support with a government project. He was actually the early version of what we all now know to be Q from the James Bond films, and he asked us to help create a secret map solution for the airmen who were flying over Germany. So the pencil itself, it was a finished pencil that had been bored out, and inside had a tissue paper map that had been very carefully stuffed in, and it was actually held together by three little bits of cotton. On the top of the pencil, there was actually a compass hidden just underneath the eraser section. So you had the eraser, then the compass, and then the metal clasp that was then put onto the top of the pencil. So for the untrained eye, it was just a pencil. But those airmen knew they had to get rid of the eraser piece. There's the compass, inside is the map, and it was completely discreet. So what's amazing about this particular item that the business helped create is that we didn't know about it until we moved from the old factory to the new factory, because the plans for this were hidden away in the safe. And what we did was try and recreate that particular pencil using the process that we know they followed, and we couldn't do it. So such was the high degree of engineering back in the 1940s that we simply cannot make that same pencil today. It is that advanced and it is that incredible that they managed to deliver that project for Her Majesty's government. Now, the reason we didn't know that this project actually existed was because those senior managers were sworn to secrecy under the Official Secrets Act. And actually, if we were to look back in the archives, that particular person who asked us to do the project doesn't exist. Such is the level of secrecy. So we made the world's longest colour pencil, really to show that we have such a high level of craftsmanship within the business and the local community. So it's actually 25 feet or 7.91 metres long. So the world's longest colour pencil was created by shaping two very, very long pieces of wood, two very heavy pieces of wood, and making sure that they were bored out and the pencil strip mixture was poured in the middle. They were then closed together and glued up. They were then spray painted and stenciled so that it looked as a fully operational studio pencil, and then the end was sharpened with chainsaws. Importantly, for it to be recognised as the world's longest colour pencil, it had to make a proper mark on a surface, and I'm actually pleased to say that one of the people who helped make it is here with us today. Adam.
In the first couple of years of me starting at the pencil factory as a quality apprentice, one of the first jobs I got to do was help work on the giant pencil. So my job on that was to take a syringe and squirt some glue into some little joints as the two sides of the pencil was pushed together. And then I was part of the team who carried it from around the back of our sheds down to the museum where it is now. And that actually took everybody that worked in the factory to go, and we had a bit of rope, go underneath, and all of us were stood there, one either side, carrying this giant pencil down to the museum. We had to stop the road to do it and look like a right bunch.
So when we moved to the new site in Workington, the managing director at the time reached out to the Lord Lieutenant of Cumbria, who he'd worked with, and asked whether the Queen would open the site, which she did. So Derwent actually won the Queen's Award for Sustainability. She was very happy to come along and open the new site on its first day. So the Derwent brand is all about legacy. And that family knowledge that's passed down from generation to generation is so important in making sure that the very involved process of making a pencil delivers the right outcome. When we were in Keswick at the original factory site, it really was a series of families that were running that particular business and production unit. We had to move out of the old factory because it wasn't fit for purpose for a modern production environment. So we purpose-built a new factory as close as we could, which is actually 20 minutes up the road in Workington area, and we moved over all of those beautiful traditional pencil machines and of course all of the families and teams that worked in the original factory as well. So we had to stay local because it was the people that make the particular brands and pencils what they are, their quality, their expertise, and we needed that to maintain, obviously. And it's still now the case that we have families of people working in that factory. The important thing was we had to be local to our roots. We're staying in the Lake District because that's the heart of pencils, that's the home of where pencils are from. It's not as simple as putting something at the front and hoping it comes out right at the end. You have to make sure that you have a very steadied hand on each part of that process so that every element of the production piece comes together perfectly to create that perfect pencil at the end.